Good afternoon and welcome on this International Women's Day to the Rotary Club of York, the 26th largest Rotary club in the world, and a club dedicated to imagining and living out the Rotary motto of service above self. I'm Glenn Miller, the club president. Was it something I said? Oh. Our opening song today, God Bless America, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Brittany Reese. Our invocation will be led by past District Governor Dick Brown, and our visitors and visiting Rotarians will be introduced by Anthony Moore. Please take a moment, if you've not done so already, to silence your electronic devices.
Please join me. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for days of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plains. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have such a multi-talented president. When you're standing next to him, you never know if he's going to sing bass, tenor, alto. I was waiting for soprano, but it didn't quite come out. But thank you, Glenn. That's a compliment, by the way. Thank you very much, Glenn. Let us each turn to the source of spiritual strength that is within us and pray. We thank you for the bountiful blessings of food, shelter, and opportunities to serve through Rotary. May those of us who have share with those who have not. May those of us who can do for those who cannot. May those of us who are loved love those who are not. And may we all live our lives so that the world is better off for having had us walk on Mother Earth. Amen.
And Anthony, it's your turn for visitor introductions.
Good morning, everybody. Y'all hear me? Sorry. I'll just do this right here. All right, so it is my honor today to welcome our visitors, starting with Michelle Mertz, guest of our speakers. Please stand when I call your name. And there we go. Cora Taylor, guest of Andy Rawitz in the building. All right. Steve Little, guest of Youth Leadership. And Youth Leadership really packed the house tonight, so I'm just going to say the next few visitors are from Youth Leadership, so I don't have to keep repeating it. Jacqueline Smith. All right, Sierra Gibbs. And if y'all wouldn't mind, remain standing so you can be welcomed by President Glenn. Angel Philpo. All right. Stacy Gibbs. And then we have Diana Jules Peen, guest of past President Ann Druck. And last but certainly not least, we have Judy Nunez, also guest of Youth Leadership. All right, welcome. I'll put this back down for you.
Wow. Between you and Dick, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. All righty then. Friends, we are very grateful to have you with us today. I know that you're going to enjoy our program, and I know you've already enjoyed the fellowship of the lively and often humorous and diverse members who are surrounding you at these tables. I hope that this won't be your last visit among us, and I hope you might even consider becoming a part of our fellowship. Rotarians, please help me welcome our visitors. You may be seated. A few announcements, as always, for the good of the order. You have hopefully noticed during lunch that we were playing some music in the background today. I think that's a first for us. All of the songs that you were listening to were selected by our own Jen May in honor of International Women's Day, a day that has existed since 1908 to both celebrate the women in our lives and our communities and to shine a light on those places where work remains to be done to ensure that all women the world over enjoy the same inalienable rights and dignities and freedoms that are due to every person. So thank you, Jen, for providing that music, and thank you for those of you who remembered to wear purple. And if you didn't, just keep your napkin with you today and you'll be in good shape. The Fellowship Committee is hosting a happy hour at the rooftop bar at the Yorktown Hotel tonight from 5 to 7. Yes, I know it's a little chilly and windy. There is indoor space at that rooftop bar. You don't have to stand outside, but it is a glorious venue and part of our wonderfully new renovated Yorktown Hotel. So if you would be interested in attending tonight, please see Rob after the meeting today. I believe there is still some room. And good transition here. As a reminder, our March 29th weekly meeting will be held at the Yorktown Hotel. We are going home. Rotarians and their guests must, as always, register in advance since it is an off-site event. You can use the QR codes with your phones if you turn off the Wi-Fi on your phone, if you do it here from the club, or in the link found in the announcer, but please do remember to register. We cannot handle walk-in folks that day. We continue to welcome donations to our Turkey earthquake relief efforts. Directions to make those donations are again in the announcer, or you can contact Lynn directly and she will happily help you with that. And now to say a bit more about this important day that we are marking, one of our very favorite women, the incomparable Jody Keller. Jody.
I have to move this down even more. Thank you, President Glenn. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests. Imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where we value and celebrate difference. Today is International Women's Day, when we focus on women's contributions and achievements, while we raise awareness of the fact that our actions will speak louder than words in achieving parity. As a wise sage once said, we've come a long way, but there's always further to go. And Rotary provides an excellent window into how women have made a difference in less than 40 years. In May 1987, the Supreme Court ruled that Rotary clubs may not exclude women from membership based on gender. And in that month of May, the Rotary Club of Marin Sunrise, California, was the first to have a female charter member. However, 15 years before that, clubs had begun lobbying for female members, and in '77, 10 years before the Supreme Court ruling, a Rotary club in California admitted a woman, and Rotary International terminated the club's membership in RI. So it wasn't until 1989 that women were welcomed into Rotary clubs around the world. On this International Women's Day, we celebrate the achievements of women and the recognition by Rotary International that women belonged in Rotary clubs based upon their qualifications, not their gender. Now a bit of Rotary history. The York Rotary history. The Rotary Club of York admitted our first female member in 1988, who unfortunately left the club after a brief time. Jean Ream and I then joined later that year in September 1988, admittedly to the dismay of a few, but with open arms by the majority of the men in our club. I have made lifelong friends in Rotary, including a few who may not have loved the idea at first. And Jean and I have been active members ever since, 35 years and counting. And have we seen our club grow and thrive? Just a few statistics. 25% of the 1.2 million Rotarians around the world are women. However, 26% or 70 of our club members are women. We've had 7 women presidents in our club, beginning with yours truly in the mid-90s. I still had gray hair and I was a little tanner, but okay, I digress. Followed by Kim Blouse, Michelle Baker, Marcia Bornt Davis, Di Hershey, Ann Druck, and most recently, Jackie Summers. And now we have Courtney Piccolo in line as the president-elect nominee. This year, the president of Rotary International is the first female president, Jennifer Jones from Canada. And in July 2024, Stephanie Urchik, a member of the McMurray, Pennsylvania Club, will become the second woman to serve as RI president. And one other piece of Rotary lore I'd like to talk about a minute is the whole notion of the Rotary ands. I've always been curious about this. I don't know that everyone have heard about this, but I looked into it a little bit. And in many Rotary clubs throughout the world, still, there are some still that perhaps aren't admitting a lot of women, but wives of male members, they're still affectionately referred to as a Rotary Ann. This name was never intended to be one of disparagement, as it grew out of an occasion that happened in 1914 when a group of Rotarians boarded a train for a Rotary convention. Few wives attended events back then, but it just so happened that the only woman aboard the train was the wife of a Rotarian named Anne. As the train took on additional passengers along the way on the way to the convention, she was introduced as the Rotarians Anne. On arrival at the convention, a greeter happened to also have a wife named Anne, and apparently the men gathered then to chant Rotary Ann, Rotary Ann. Pretty cool, huh? And here we go. And as the ladies were then hoisted to their husbands' shoulders, thus the name stuck as the term used for the wives of Rotarians. Personally, I had always wondered where that name came from and honestly hoped that it wasn't related to a Raggedy Ann. So I was glad that, well, not exactly glad, but I like this better. Anyway, the point of the story is that women have always played a large role in Rotary, assisting in service work behind the scenes. So today we celebrate the increasing diversity of our club and clubs everywhere. Our clubs reflect our communities, are stronger, and are better prepared to provide greater service above self. Go sisters. And fellow Rotarians.
Thank you very, very much. Oop. Could I please ask our present former club presidents, female club presidents, to stand and be recognized, especially Jackie and Di. And now Steve Martinez has something to share with us about a networking opportunity at the SPCA. Steve.
Thank you very much. So on your table is a flyer that says Sugar Story, and it gives you information about a tour that we're offering at the York County SPCA. So when I give tours of the York County SPCA, at the end of the tour, almost everybody says the same thing. And what they say is they had no idea that we do all those things. And every time somebody goes on a tour, they're surprised that we do all these things. When most people think about the SPCA, they think about puppies and kittens and animal adoptions. But we do so much more. So I'll give you an example. Everybody knows that we do human services, obviously, but they're surprised to learn that we also provide human services, or we do animal services, but they're surprised to learn that we provide human services too. And the reason why we do that is because we have an internal mantra at the SPCA, which is that we want surrendering your pet to the York County SPCA to be a measure of last resort. And our job is to connect people to as many resources as possible so that those animals never have to come into the building in the first place. So an example of that is our Karma program. A reason why a person surrenders their pet to the York County SPCA is not because they're not good animal keepers or because they don't love their pet. It's because their pet needs some kind of life-saving surgery that they cannot afford to have done. And so rather than see their pet suffer, they'll surrender their pet to us, knowing that we would provide that life-saving surgery so that we can put them up for adoption. So we have the Karma program, which provides free or affordable medical care from pets that are coming from low-income households. So then we'll do the work, we'll provide the surgery, and then afterwards we'll reunite them with their pet so that they can go back home and that pet never has to come into the building in the first place. So another reason why a person would surrender their pet to us is because that family is struggling with food insecurity. And so if they're struggling to put food on the table, they're also struggling to feed their pet. And so we provide the county's largest pet food distribution program. So anybody who requests food or needs help with pet food, we give them food for free, and then they can feed their pet, and that pet doesn't have to come to our shelter because they would otherwise surrender that pet because it needed sustenance. And then the last example I would give you is this one is, so a reason that'll keep a person in a domestic violent situation rather than leaving that situation is they're afraid of what'll happen to their pet if they leave it behind. And in fact, some people will control the other person by threatening to harm their animal. And so what we do is to remove that barrier from leaving that situation is we'll partner with other nonprofits in the community like the YWCA or the Red Cross, those kinds of organizations. And those organizations are working with domestic violent clients, and they come up with like an exit plan. And part of that plan is, what do we do with your pet? And so what they do is we work with them and we'll transport that pet to our facility. And we have a special room, we call it our Safe Pet program. And their animal can reside in our Safe Pet program, and it doesn't cost them any money. And in fact, we will feed and take care of their pet and play with it and send them pictures and do any kind of medical work that that animal needs, and it doesn't cost them anything. And then when they get their housing situation stabilized, and they're ready, and they can visit their pet whenever they want, of course, too. And then when they're ready and their housing is stabilized, we'll reunite them with their pet. So I hope that you take advantage of this opportunity to go on a tour of the York County SPCA, because I would encourage you to set aside what you think you know about us. And instead, like, remain curious and keep an open mind and take advantage of this tour, because I'll bet you'll be just like everybody else. And at the end of the tour, you'll say you had no idea that we did those things. And so I don't know if John Kleindens is in the room. Is he here? He was the one who actually created this idea to do a tour and to offer this. And he, in fact, came up with a sponsor to provide lunch and all that. So John I wanted to give him kudos for doing that. So thank you all very much for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you all. I can't wait to show you around the building. We just renovated it. We have some really exciting announcements that we're making in a few weeks. And so I look forward to sharing all those with you. So how you RSVP for that tour is on the back of the flyer at your table. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. And now Deb Harrison has a word to bring to us from our emphasis of the month, literacy.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Rotary Club of York's Literacy Committee, we are inviting members to participate in our annual book drive during the month of March. Your donations will help to purchase books to be distributed to children in York City. You will find a table set up at Rotary each Wednesday in March to collect your donation or pledge. And I might add that you can opt to add a pledge to your April 1st dues. Lynn has approved us to be able to do that. This year, we're raising funds for home-based family care providers in the city. You might remember that in years past, we're typically providing funds to daycare centers to purchase books and distribute them to families. This year, we're looking at situations that are a little bit under the radar. Home care providers are typically women taking care of up to 5 children in their home. They are licensed by the Department of Human Services, and just like centers, they earn Keystone Stars designations based upon meeting quality standards. They care for different age children, and the care often is for second and third shift employees. They're small business owners that support families so that they can work. Your generous contribution will go toward providing these children and their families with literacy materials for both the provider and for the children in their homes. Please join our committee, who has agreed to 100% participation from our committee members to help provide these much needed materials. Our goal is to raise $1,500, so we hope to have 100% participation from you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deb. And now, one of our favorite moments in every month, Linda Gorder will present for us our March Students of the Month. Linda.
Oh, I just lost it. Don't tell me this. This has been a great day for me so far. I left all of my paperwork on my desk and everyone in the office is sick, so they can't even forward it to me. And so I'm going to be reading off my phone. I apologize for that. We have young adults from William Penn High School here. We have Sierra Gibbs, who is accompanied by her mother, Stacy Gibbs. And we also have Angel Nunez, who is accompanied by Judy Nunez. I'm going to introduce Sierra first. Be prepared to be wowed on this International Women's Day. She is a member of the National Honor Society. She's the 2024 class president. She's a captain and member of the varsity basketball team. She's a member of Y Achievers, and she's also a Penn State Talent Search member. Her hobbies, she's a member of the 2024 Lady Raiders Academy AAU team, and she's a volunteer at the York County Food Bank in her spare time, which she obviously has tons of. Other awards and distinctions, she's on high honor roll. She is a Miss PA basketball nomination, which I did not know, but it is a statewide honor to be nominated to this team. She's second team selection for YAIAA District 1 2022. She's an honorable mention Game Time PA 2022, and she's a 2-time team MVP. She wants to attend college and become a doctor of physical therapy. Yay, physical therapist, my daughter's one. And she wants to obtain academic and athletic scholarships. Please welcome Sierra Gibbs.
Good afternoon. We were asked to talk about an experience that was significant in our life. It was Monday, February 20th, and the gym was packed. My heart was pounding and butterflies in my stomach. It was the first district basketball game for the York High Lady Bearcats since 2016. We had to go in focused and determined to win. I can remember 2 years ago, we only had 4 fans in the stands, and 2 of them were my parents. It was a special day for the community, the school, and our fan base. Every time we walked into the gym, we were always the underdogs from where we come from and to the color of our skin. However, we worked together as a team, played disciplined basketball, and finished with a win. It felt like we finally deserved the respect. We finally deserved the respect that we deserved. It was the first district win in over 20 years. As the captain and leader of our team, I had to always remain positive so my teammates could follow. This was a significant event in my life. Thank you.
She said she was a little nervous. I think she did great. Good job. Our next speaker is Angel Nunez. Again, he's accompanied by his mother. So some of his school activities are he's a member of the physics shop, National Honor Society, and he competes in track and field, which probably is starting like right now. Yeah. Community service, he works at or volunteers at the food bank. He practices Taekwondo, he swims, and he's again a member of the track team. His awards and distinctions are honor roll, distinguished honor roll, perfect attendance, which never happened with my children, I have to tell you, high honor roll, and student of the month. And he is aiming to become a coder programmer of apps and a website or a job dealing with finances. Please welcome Angel Nunez.
I would like to thank everybody here for letting me this opportunity. So my name is Angel, and I come from William Penn Senior High School. I have been always trying to be the best I can be, and my most important part of my life was community service. By community service, I have always been learning like respect and how to care about other people that have different needs. And sports also has been something big in my time period because I have been able to get friends and get other type of relationships throughout my time. And that is it. Thank you all.
Congratulations to both of you and to your parents and to your school that has had some role, no doubt, in helping you to turn out to be the fine young people that you are. And we hope you will come back and see us again and perhaps one day be among this group as members, because you certainly embody what it means to be a Rotarian. So thank you both very much. Let's give them another round of applause too. And now, without further ado, our program committee chair, past president, and the man who often accompanies Jackie Summers, Mike Summers, will introduce our program for the day. Mike.
Thank you, President Glenn. Spotlight PA is an independent, not-for-profit newsroom dedicated to high-quality investigation, public service journalism about the Pennsylvania state government and urgent statewide issues. The organization was founded in 2019 to address a crisis in journalism in Pennsylvania, which includes the ongoing and rapid decline of corporate-owned legacy news outlets, greatly diminishing access to trusted, contextual, and factual reporting across the state. With support from foundations, individual members, and more, Spotlight PA is uncovering stories that would otherwise go untold and cutting through partnership and information to deliver trusted, reliable journalism at no cost to Pennsylvanians. In only 3 years, Spotlight PA has become a leading national model for independent collaborative journalism that empowers residents and gets results. It has won numerous state national awards and driven meaningful change and policy reforms in the state capitol and beyond. The Pennsylvania House has shifted control to the Democrats and elected a new speaker. Governor Shapiro has recently elected and yesterday gave his State of the Commonwealth report and new budget. And these are many other areas that are covered by Spotlight PA. Our speakers today are Christopher Baxter, who serves as the executive director of Spotlight PA and spent years as an award-winning investigative journal reporter and editor, and Ed Mahon, an investigative reporter for Spotlight PA focused on human services. Fellow Rotarians and guests, please warmly welcome Christopher Baxter and Ed Mahon.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christopher Baxter. I'm the executive director and editor-in-chief of Spotlight PA. First of all, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having us here today, for taking the time to spend some time thinking about journalism, what it should and needs to be here in Pennsylvania, and how we're trying to reach that goal. Also want to say myself that I was at the Emmaus Rotary about a month ago and had an epiphany while I was sitting there that not only was I in the Interact Club when I was in high school, but I actually had participated in and won the four-way speech contest, which is something I had totally forgotten until I was sitting there and they were talking about it. But in reality, the values of Rotary very much reflect the values of independent, nonpartisan journalism. And I want to just give a brief overview of what Spotlight is and what we're trying to do, and also in a few minutes introduce you to Ed, one of our reporters. So as Mike mentioned, Spotlight PA was founded in 2019 really to address a growing and ongoing crisis in Pennsylvania. And that crisis is not necessarily unique to Pennsylvania. We're seeing it all across the country. But that, as he mentioned, is the decline of the corporate-owned legacy news outlets that we're used to. It's no secret that you don't get the same quality of journalism that you used to get. And that is because the corporate model, the legacy model, is broken. It's a broken ad and subscription or circulation model that was severely disrupted by the digital age. And even though a lot of the organizations that are still around are doing a lot of great work, not just continuing to do great journalism, but trying to pivot their business model to digital ad revenue or digital subscriptions, the reality is that even the ones having the greatest success still can't keep up with the losses on the print side. And that is why you continue to see smaller news pages, less of a robust news report, fewer reporters on the ground at meetings covering important events. That is sort of what is underpinning all of that. Now, here in York, you're in some ways lucky that you continue to have two news outlets that serve this region. That is unusual in Pennsylvania for sure, and also across the country. So in trying to think how we fill this gap and how we do it in a new way, a different way, how we do it in a sustainable way, we founded Spotlight PA really with a focused mission. A lot of legacy outlets or local outlets try to be everything to everyone. They cover lifestyle, sports, try to be everything. That is not Spotlight. We are not trying to be everything. We are really focused on the core of what journalism really means to our communities, to our state, and to our democracy. So if we have to think about how do we preserve the core of journalism here in Pennsylvania for years to come, we wanted to sort of bring it back to its roots, bring it back to what journalism is intended to be and the role it is intended to play in a community and in a democracy. And for us, that is two parts: robust and sort of unflinching, nonpartisan, investigative, and accountability journalism, tracking our tax dollars, holding those who are in power to account, ensuring the way our dollars are spent or how our leaders represent us is fair or ethical. And then also a robust presentation of public service journalism, which is sort of the yin and the yang, right? Investigative and public service journalism. It's not just about pointing out problems. It's also about educating and empowering people with the civic information they need about how processes work, how voting systems work, how all of this works, what the truth is, how they can get involved, and how they can drive change, right? We as journalists, reporters, we don't make the change. And that's really how it should be, as much as I would love subpoena power. But we don't have it. And we don't make that change. That's not up to us. But what we can do is empower and really arm the public to be able to demand that change and to demand it based on the facts and the reality of what is happening. And that is who and what Spotlight aims to be and to serve. Again, I've already talked a bit, but what makes Spotlight PA unique? Well, for one, we're independent, we're nonpartisan, and we're nonprofit. For two, we look at the entire state as our coverage area. So almost every news outlet in Pennsylvania is focused locally or regionally. But what that means is there's no organization that brings information together from across the state and can present it kind of in one place, allowing you to understand not just what's happening here in York, but what's happening in Erie, what's happening in Altoona, what's happening in Wilkes-Barre, and of course, what's happening in Harrisburg, and how those issues and the events there interact and affect all of us in different ways. By being able to not only better connect communities to Harrisburg and Harrisburg to communities, but Spotlight PA is also trying to connect communities to one another, because a lot of our communities share and a lot of the same issues, struggles, successes. But because of sort of the nature of Pennsylvania, the geography of Pennsylvania, the cultural history of Pennsylvania, it's very segmented and it's very regionally focused. And so our aim is to kind of be a connector among communities and people. We have no opinion content whatsoever, no endorsements, no political advertising. We have no political opinion. We don't take position on policy. We don't have guest columns. We don't have letters to the editor. We don't have comments on the site, nothing. The idea that opinion and news can live next to one another, speaking frankly with you all, is a broken concept and one that just is not a part, I think, of the path forward. That being said, we are not afraid to stand for certain core principles. We believe that transparency in government is paramount. We believe that if the taxpayers, and they do, pay for the government, they have a right to know how that money is being spent. They have a right to know if the programs that are paying for are working and are equitable for all. They have a right to know that if they elect a public official, that official will act ethically and in the best interest of his or her constituents. In the very same way, we say that the right to a free press, right, is a fundamental aspect of our democracy. These are core democratic values. They're not partisan values, but they really guide and define what Spotlight PA does on a daily basis. In addition, as I mentioned, as a nonprofit, we are fully transparent about all of our funding, all of our donors. No special access. We believe that if we demand transparency, then we ourselves practice radical transparency. In 3 short years, Spotlight PA has had really incredible success. I set a pretty high bar for myself and also for our staff, and I can tell you that where we are today is far beyond where I ever expected us to be. Let me mention one reason for that, and that is that Spotlight PA is a centralized and collaborative newsroom. And what do I mean by that? All of the work we produce, very high quality, in-depth, contextual work, is made available to the public at no cost through our website, our newsletters, our channels, but it is also shared with any newsroom or news organization in the state that wants access to it at no cost. We now have 95 newsroom partners all across the state that republish our work. That is the largest collaborative distribution model network in journalism in the country. And it is part of the reason that Spotlight PA has grown so quickly, because as part of that, they have to label stories as Spotlight, and we're tapping into existing readership networks like here in York with the Daily Record and the Dispatch. If you read those, you'll see Spotlight PA stories there. And that's often how people first come to interact with us, and then we'll sign up for a newsletter or come to an event, and then that relationship will grow. We are attracting new and sustained local and national support. As Mike mentioned, Spotlight PA really in the past 8 to 12 months has become a national leader, again, in some of the unique aspects to our model for sustaining public service and investigative journalism on the state level. And also expanding. We continue to see enormous opportunity, again, with this sort of statewide footing that we have. Lots of ways an organization like Spotlight PA can better serve communities and regions. And every day really for us is just doing the best and having the most impact we can that day with the resources we have that day, and just continuing to build. Real quick, in just the past year, Spotlight PA has received 5 national journalism awards. When we talk about high quality journalism, you talk to anyone in journalism, honestly, whether it's a hedge fund that's stripping one of your newspapers for parts, all the way up to the New York Times or the Washington Post, everyone will talk to you about high quality journalism, but not all the journalism we get is high quality journalism. And most people know what it looks like, but the fact that an organization like Spotlight PA that was not around 3 years ago, that did not exist, is winning national awards for investigative journalism, going up against those top news organizations in the country, is, again, just another sign of what we're talking about in the journalism that we're trying to produce. These are some of the beats that we currently cover as an organization on a statewide basis. Elections, voting, and democracy is a central focus of our public service work, and an area that continues to expand. I'm sure if you're familiar with our work, you've noticed that continued expansion. Obviously, the governor, legislature, and wider statewide government apparatus, criminal justice, economic development and housing, health and human services. We have the only investigative reporter anywhere dedicated to Penn State University. We cover rural issues in wider Pennsylvania. And also we have a local municipal accountability reporter based in North Central Pennsylvania. And here I wanted to pause for a minute to introduce Ed Mahon, one of our investigative reporters who covers health and human services and who also lives right here. Ed?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for being here. It's really an honor to be here today. I've been telling some people I was a reporter at the York Daily Record for 6 years. And during that time, I attended many Rotary Club of York meetings at the Yorktown Hotel. I would watch in the gallery as Governor Tom Corbett, Governor Tom Wolf, Senator Scott Wagner, Congressman Scott Perry, and a bunch of other people not named Tom or Scott also gave presentations. I covered lots of debates, sometimes pretty contentious ones, but the meetings were always such a great opportunity as a reporter to hear from important people and to find out what was going on in the community. So it's really an honor to be on the other side. I've been a reporter for more than 16 years, and the motivation is really for me, about service and making an impact. I joined Spotlight in August 2020, about a year after Chris and others launched the newsroom. I've covered the opioid epidemic, problems with oversight of addiction treatment, complications for patients and employers, and a bunch of other people from the medical marijuana industry, which is growing. Those stories have had an impact. They've received statewide and national recognition, and they've shaped debate among policymakers. In short, I've really had the chance to do the best work of my career, and that's a great opportunity. So why is that? Why can I do the best work of my career here at Spotlight PA and while living in New York? It comes down to like three main things. One is the time. We get time to dedicate to these stories, to report them out. The team, there's a ton of great people at Spotlight PA. We're very supportive and collaborative. And it's the task at hand. You know, we have a very clear mission statement about what we're trying to do. And we're trying to go deeper and do the kind of work that's not being done elsewhere, to understand the root causes of problems and look for solutions. And I'll give you one example of that. 2 years ago, we heard about a man who was struggling with opioid addiction, who was wrongly denied treatment assistance because of confusion over federal rules. And weeks after he was wrongly denied that assistance, he tragically died from a fentanyl overdose. We wanted to understand what went wrong and how it could be fixed. So I talked to his family. His mother showed me old photographs of him. She gave me a copy, or she let me read his journal with entries from days before he passed away. I reached out to dozens of counties across the state, talked with treatment providers, social service agencies, had a lot of back and forth with state, federal, county officials, went through thousands of pages of public records. And it was a lot of work, but the story was important and it prompted changes, some big, some small. And the man's mother wrote to me at one point saying, quote, "The more I learn, the more disturbed I am. However, it just keeps deepening my appreciation for you and your organization." And so that's the kind of work I want to be doing. And it's the kind of work that Spotlight PA has made possible. And it's also neat to see, as a former York Daily Record reporter, to see these stories run in both the York Dispatch and the York Daily Record, who are very fierce competitors. And so it's a cool opportunity for me. I'll just add one more personal note. My wife and I both grew up outside Philly. My job brought us to York in 2012. We ended up staying here. We bought a house a few years ago, or several years ago now. And we're raising our boys here. Ben's 8, Theo's 6. My wife, she works at a local preschool. She's leading the Yorkshire Elementary School PTO. And right now she's working hard on organizing a big Lego bingo fundraiser, which is something I didn't know existed until a few years ago. And I'll also be volunteering at the event in hopefully another high impact role. I'll be dressing up as the school's mascot, Yorkie Bear, putting on the giant head, giant gloves, and giant feet, and struggling to see a little bit. But it's also a pretty rewarding job, and it's the kind of work I'm honored to be doing in your county as well. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Ed. This is just a depiction of what I talked about earlier, which is where Spotlight PA distributes its content. Again, this is a great benefit and really a testament to our supporters and our donors who not only give us the ability, the time, the resources to do work like Ed mentioned, but the ability to distribute that to everyone in the state through all of our partnerships. We really very strongly believe that access to public service and investigative journalism should not just be available to those who can afford it, especially of late. At the beginning of the year, we've heard from some of our smaller individual members, folks who give $5, $10 a year, whatever they can because they believe in the cause, who couldn't give this year. And it really drove home for me, wow, because you're having a tough year or a tough January or a tough February, doesn't mean that you should no longer now have access to this work. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make you any less important to our community and to our democracy. I wanted to share this just because it's from one of our partners here in New York, David Martins, who's a great supporter of Spotlight PA, a very fervent supporter of Spotlight PA, and a great advocate for what we're doing. And he often will attend our events or come to wherever we are and speak to the importance of what we're doing and how it benefits local communities. Because even those that still have news organizations most likely do not have anyone in Harrisburg, do not have anyone that is able to focus on statewide issues or even bring in that statewide news report to the newspaper or to whatever the organization is. And unfortunately, they don't have the time or mandate to do the kind of work that we are doing because the legacy model, unfortunately, still within the digital transition, really emphasizes quantity over quality. And so a lot of the reporters that remain are great reporters, but the mandate is to produce more quickly and not to actually dive in and really deliver the kind of quality and value to the public that Spotlight PA can provide. I just wanted to mention for those of you who are new to our work, again, you might see it in the local paper, but if you want to follow every story that we have a number of newsletters, email newsletters that you can sign up for at spotlightpa.org/newsletters. Michelle, who's our Director of Individual and Corporate Giving, has also left some information on the tables if you're interested in signing up there. We also have twice weekly virtual events for free that are great. I know some of you have attended, I've talked to you, but if you haven't checked those out, there's lots of ways to interact with what we're doing and keep up with the really important news happening, again, in Harrisburg and across the state. And with that, I just wanted to open it up for discussion and any questions that you all might have about our work. Sure. Okay, the question was, have we come up with any opinion on mail-in voting as a change from in-person voting? So I would say, first of all, we don't really have an opinion or a policy perspective on it. We have done a lot of coverage, though, that a lot of the questions that have been raised about mail voting are not actually based in any foundation of fact. It is obviously a very popular method in Pennsylvania to vote. And even though after the last presidential election, there were a lot of questions and concerns from Republicans about the process of mail-in voting, In this past election in November, we actually saw a lot of Republicans starting to encourage their folks to use mail-in voting because, in fact, it's a pretty effective way to get the vote out. So we've seen some transition among the Republican Party on the viewpoint on mail-in voting. Also, could just be kind of an acknowledgement that it's here to stay. I think it would be difficult to roll it back, and now with the change in leadership in the Pennsylvania House to Democrats, I think the prospect of rolling back that mail-in voting law is unlikely. But there continue to be debates around other measures around the sort of security of our voting process and our electoral procedure. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, yes, two important prongs. So the question was, the education wasn't on our current coverage list. Do we have plans to do that and to get into schools to kind of help in terms of curriculum identify sort of good journalism versus bad journalism? The answer to both is yes. So what we cover now is based on what we have resources for now. But our priority list for new coverage areas that we are fundraising for currently this year include K-12 and higher ed, environment and labor, particularly issues around blue collar workers and those industries which we feel getting very little attention and are very not well understood. And then environment. Sorry, I mentioned environment, labor. The third one is caregiving. So elder care, maternal care, child care. These are huge issues here in Pennsylvania. They get almost zero attention in news coverage. And that is really our number one priority for a whole host of reasons. But that's the way we have to evaluate, right? It's just what's the best we can do with the resources today. But those, I agree, are priority areas. And then to your second question, part of our growth of our public service journalism, particularly around kind of democracy, voting systems, elections, public engagement, really does come back to a lot of the core principles of media literacy, although I don't think that term is really a great term and doesn't necessarily invoke what we want it to, but we really see our role as empowering more Pennsylvanians to get involved, right? So another thing we often will say is, again, for things we stand for, that we believe the more people who get involved in our communities, in our government, and the more people who vote, regardless of how they vote or what party they vote, the better off we'll be, right? That level of engagement. So we are really focused and trying to grow out that area, which includes a democracy initiative that we launched last year that we continue to fundraise towards. We launched a new election center website last year. Last year was the first year we translated all of our voter and candidate guides into Spanish and distributed them through our Spanish language partners and our other partners that reach the Latino community. There is tremendous amount of expansion, public education work that we can do, and that is part of our initiative to grow that piece of the organization. Hi.
Can you speak to your public model of raising for reporting is sustainable, or how you interact with them?
Yeah, sure. So the question was how we interact with public radio, public TV, and how this sort of funding model is sustainable. So we have pretty much every, I think we might have every now major public radio station is a partner. WHYI in Philadelphia, WESA in Pittsburgh, all across PSU, you name it. So they not only have access to our work to republish on the website, but often our reporters will appear on their programming and their shows talking about the work we're doing. In some cases, like Ed's done, we'll actually repurpose the work we've done into a radio script and produce a radio package for them. In terms of the fundraising, we have found that, again, donors are very intelligent and smart, and they understand what their public radio or public television service provides to the community, what Spotlight PA is trying to do, and how those two things complement one another. So we, I think, have a lot of overlap in donors, but we have seen no negative result from that. And our public radio station partners would tell you the very same thing. We are a little more hands-off in terms of directly promoting like our fundraising events through their channels, just because we know they're doing very much the same thing. But again, we've seen no negative interplay. In fact, we think there's quite a large base for support of this kind of journalism. The problem that we face is that all of our experiences with journalism have been so negative for so long now, 10, 15, 20 years. Now we've been in this decline, fewer reporters, layoffs, corporate-owned media with ownership that aren't here, don't care about Pennsylvania. Some of our legacy outlets now in the hands of hedge funds, the Morning Call in Allentown, the Reading Eagle, two examples that it's not inaccurate to say are simply being stripped for parts, and soon there will just be nothing left. So again, it's incumbent on us to have the discussion, to show up, right, and talk about the core of what journalism is and why we need that in our communities and as part of our democracy. Do we have an answer to replace everything you used to get, all the sports, all the lifestyle, all the entertainment, a reporter at every meeting? No, we don't have that answer. But if we can't have that, then we need to have journalism at its core of what it means to a healthy democracy. And that's the sustainable base and partnership and collaborative model that we are trying to build. Yep. Sure. Yep. So the question was, what other examples of this kind of approach for journalism exist across the country, and sort of what's the sustainability in the nonprofit space for news? There are quite a few now nonprofit newsrooms across the country. Some of the oldest and most successful ones include the Texas Tribune in Texas, the Vermont Digger, VT Digger in Vermont, and some others. We are among the newer class of nonprofit newsrooms. What I would say, though, is that I think we have brought a level of strategy, business thinking, and sort of long-term sustainability perspective in what we're building. That's a little different. So a lot of the early nonprofit newsrooms were journalists who were laid off, from a major outlet and sort of banded together and said, hey, we've got to do something about this, right? And they started an organization, they do great work, but there wasn't necessarily the underpinning of the business acumen, the fundraising acumen, what this is going to take to be a sustainable long-term organization. I think we're seeing more of that now. And there's more support across the country, support groups for that. But there certainly is a question about the extent of philanthropic support for journalism writ large to the problem. What I would say, though, is when we compare the amount of philanthropic dollars going to journalism versus the amount of philanthropic dollars going to other cultural and important institutions, right, that we've all sort of agreed upon are really part and parcel of the fabric of our community, the art museum, the symphony, the important nonprofits in our community, we pale in comparison to the support that are basically going to any other major philanthropic area. So while it is an important question, we think there's tremendous more we can do to attract philanthropic support, again, to this particular form of journalism that we're doing, and the importance of it to the community, and what it costs us if we don't have it, because the ripple effect of that is enormous. If you're a business owner, right, there's a reason you want an informed customer base, you want an informed electorate. People who have access to information, who are engaged, make for a better community. We know this. And we also know that if we're not here, if we're not on the ground, if we're not filling this space, that other actors will, right? The ability to provide information, whatever your motives may be in that information, or maybe not as true as that information may be, is a very valuable space. And we've seen with the decline of local news that actors in misinformation, partisan actors, sort of shadow actors, as you mentioned, people who have an agenda but are sort of masking that agenda through a couple fronts and then making themselves look like local news. Many outlets all across the state in Pennsylvania, websites that you would think are local news are not, are part of these networks. They exist on both sides of the political aisle because, again, this power to inform and ultimately influence, which is the goal of a partisan actor, is a very valuable space. And we need news organizations taking up that space and having that presence, because in the absence, we will see a continued rise of the misinformation and sort of confusion that results without it.
Chris and Ed, I think we're all comforted to know that apparently unbiased journalism is not an oxymoron any longer. We're grateful for the work that you've been doing. I have been reading and following your stuff without knowing much about you, but when I got the call asking if you all could come and present, I was pleased that we were able to make that work today. Thank you for your presence with us. Thank you for the good work that you're doing on our behalf and on behalf of the citizens of York and of Pennsylvania. Chris and Ed have both signed the book plate and the book, The People We Keep by Allison Larkin. And this will be donated to the William Penn High School. And I'll be very happy to present that today before you leave. Next week, we will hear from Kim Brister, Vice President and Chief DEI Officer for WellSpan Health, and Demetria Middleton, Human Resources Manager at Harley-Davidson York, on welcoming workplaces, best practices for DEI among large employers. Welcoming workplaces is an effort of the York County Economic Action Plan's goal to create opportunities for all people by building and retaining a more diverse workforce and establishing more welcoming workplaces for diverse individuals. WellSpan Health and Harley participated in the development of the Welcoming Workplaces effort, and we will hear from Kim and Demetria about the value of diversity in a large organization. We close today, speaking of objective journalism, with a quote from Walter Cronkite. Those of us older to remember Walter Cronkite. And the quote today is, "I can't imagine a person becoming a success who doesn't give this game of life everything that he has got." Go out there and give it everything you've got, folks. Before we adjourn, ladies, members of the club, please come to the front for a group picture of all of the women of the Rotary Club of York. If you would come immediately to the front before leaving for that photograph, we would be grateful. This meeting is adjourned.